Hey, what's up, my people? John Middlekauff, new YouTube channel. What I need you to do, subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, share with your friends. Appreciate everyone that has. It's the podcast, 3 and Out. You can listen wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple, Spotify. We got you covered. Also, thevolume.com. We got merch right here. FlexFit hat. Go to thevolume.com. Get yourself a 3 and Out hat.
All right, 34-31, Niners' second Super Bowl in 5 seasons, overcame a 17-point lead. So Dan Campbell is going to get, barbecued because of his play calling. He's not my favorite coach. He never has been. He's much more of a player sensibility than like a coach, than like a McVay who's young but is a coach. Campbell, to me, this is who he is. He's built the culture on it. I get it. Here's my take. Josh Reynolds drops, fumbles, blown coverages. How much heat does Dan Campbell deserve?
Colin, listen, going forward to me is situational. And I understand a lot of times throughout the year, tie game, up 1 score, week 6, week 10, it's 24-10. And you have the Niners weren't on the ropes. They were falling out of the ring. I mean, they were getting their ass kicked. You kick a field goal, you make it a 3-score game. Yeah. So, yeah, you could say it hit them in the hands, but this is, we see guys drop balls all the time. You have a chance to kick a field goal. They have to score 3 times. I would understand if it's like, hey, it only makes 16 points. It's still a 2-score game. It would have made it a 3-score game, which at that point, the Niners defense wasn't playing well. Their offense, it gave the Niners life. And let's face it, the Niners had no life because Purdy was up and down in the first half, mainly down. Defense was atrocious. He didn't have to go for on 4th down in the first half because he was getting first downs on like 2nd down every single series, right? Well, they were like 5 of 7 on 3rd down. He was killing them.
Well, I'd said this to you and on FS1 10 times this year. The star of the Lions is Brad Holmes, the GM. It's not the quarterback. It's not Dan Campbell. He's not McVay or Shanahan. And Goff isn't Patrick Mahomes or even Herbert. He's one of the last true pocket guys in the league. I mean, Purdy looked like Lamar Jackson in the second half compared to Goff. So my takeaway is I still think the strength of this team is not the coach or the quarterback, though I really do like Goff. It's the players. They remind me of a younger version of the Niners. But, I think if you'd have said all year long what worried you about Detroit, it never would have been the talent. Everybody's secondary gets gashed. I mean, the Chiefs are one of the few teams you would have said, oh, Dan Campbell's coaching or Goff doesn't come through. Wasn't that sort of what happened?
I will say this, though, Colin. It does come down to your coordinators, in the playoffs. We saw it in Baltimore and Kansas City, right? This game, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, was by far the star of the game through 2.5 quarters. He was unstoppable. And you have a chance to me, making it 17 points. Now, listen, Kyle said at the beginning of the week, this is part of playing Dan Campbell. He gets it on you. It can be crushing. But if your defense gets it and you're in a position where you're down, it swings it. And it swung it. And I'm with you. Like, listen, Dan Campbell's not calling the plays, right? Dan Campbell is there to give the thumbs up or thumbs down on that. And I'm a huge believer in he did the right thing. It's not about the end result. Bullshit. This is an end result sport. And when you don't get it in a win or go home situation, I have no problem during the season. I do think situationally, second half, NFC Championship, when you're beating the crap out of a team and you're the underdog, 7-point lead, I would kind of understand it. Like, really try. You're up 14 points, Colin. I mean, the 17 points, it would have deflated the 49ers. But that swing gave him life. But like you said, Dan Campbell lives by the sword, and sometimes the sword gets stuck right into his belly.
So I thought it was interesting because, Brock Purdy, I think, he's a fairly limited thrower. He's okay. The pocket collapsed. He threw a really ugly pick at one point in the game. I have it written down some here. It was Brock Purdy in the second quarter. Pocket collapsed. And he's just not the kind of guy that can sit in there, stand over it. He's small without a huge arm. But I did think in the second half, and it felt like he was told by Shanahan, they do some man-to-man here, run. Because it looked very intentional to me by Brock Purdy in the second half. Like, it wasn't just, hey, I'm gonna go. He played with a script in the first half. wasn't working. Second half, it almost looks like Shanahan said, listen, don't be afraid to move. Okay, don't be afraid to move. It'll soften up the defense. That's what it looked like to me. Do you think it was just him going, or there was some intention to it?
I think he's a pretty instinctive player, right? Because he has to overcome height limitations and arm limitations. So one thing he's done all season long, and listen, through 2 quarters in this game and through the majority of the Packer game, I think everyone was thinking, is this guy their long-term quarterback? You can't play with this guy in big games.
Right.
But this is why they believe in him. I mean, part of evaluating quarterbacks, I'm sure we'll talk about it coming up to the draft, is the intangible stuff. The kid's got some moxie and he's got some toughness and mental toughness. He doesn't wilt because it would have been easy to go into the tank. I thought the first half he was playing like shit. I mean, he looked overwhelmed in the pocket. He looked bad. Some of the passes, I mean, he was letting rip or flying over guys' heads. This is not raining today. It was 75 degrees in Levi Stadium. So I thought more that he's just an instinctive player and he just had to find a way. Almost like I have to will myself to make some plays. And he's a pretty good athlete. I know a lot of people don't think, part of the reason they moved off Trey Lance so quickly is because Purdy was the better athlete, right?
Yeah.
He moves a lot better. Honestly, his movement is really an NFL. It's an underrated skill in the league because how many plays do the Niners make outside the script of the given play?
Yeah.
Avoid some sacks. He's small, so he can kind of dip and run around. Obviously, he can run relatively quick in a straight angle, but he can move quick laterally. Keeps him play that one play that the little lob to Jennings, but that can also get him in trouble, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of live with the aggressive. He could kind of turn into a gunslinger.
Yeah.
One reason everyone had him red flag coming out of Iowa State. Now looking back, they were an undermanned team. He threw a lot of interceptions.
Yes,
because he is willing to take some chances for a guy that doesn't exactly have Brett Favre or Josh Allen's arm.
One of the things, though they were a favorite, I thought clearly Baltimore melted down late in the game. And I thought Detroit, starting with Josh Reynolds' drops, melted down. And this is something that it really matters. San Francisco's got a veteran team. Kansas City, Andy, Travis, Spags, Mahomes. Mahomes is now a veteran player, right?
Yeah.
There is something to be said, John. Been there, done that. Because I thought, I mean, you could see, when Lamar with that terrible throw in the end zone, Zay Flowers, what in the hell is that? Roquan Smith with a personal foul. And then I watched this game and I'm like, oh, this is nerves. I felt San Francisco melted a bit. Listen, there is this historic pressure. They've never made a Super Bowl. There's Jags, Houston, Browns, Lions. There are not many of them left. I kind of felt like they melted.
Well, I think you saw in the second half with the 49ers defense that they started playing with a different pace. They started flying to the ball. They definitely were more fundamentally sound. They weren't out of place constantly that was happening in the first half. And obviously the Chiefs, who have won Super Bowls, this Niner team hasn't won one, but they've been in this game 4 or 5 years, right? It was a huge deal for the Lions to be here for the first time in 30 years. And you just see a championship level character. And part of that, like you said, is just keeping your head, not attacking back, not swinging back when you get swung on, not, hanging your head when you miss a tackle. Because the Niners easily could have gone to the tank, I would say about 50% through this game. Yeah. And I think they proved a lot. Like the Chiefs showed up to win, that they have that championship character, that championship blood. They showed up ready to kick ass, and they did throughout the whole game. The Niners got hit in the teeth immediately, and they were hanging on for dear life. They just won't fold. And it gets back to a lot of the character of the guys from Deebo Samuel. How many plays did he make in the second half? George Kittle, Fred Warner, and Drake Greenlaw making open field tackles. All their DBs who had given up huge plays and big runs early in the game flying to the ball. So to me, there's a level of like, coaches say this nonstop, don't quit. Don't, play the next play. These games come down to small. Even the Chiefs-Ravens game, the score it wasn't big, right? 17-7. You're a fumble and a touchdown away from being right in it. So you can't get down on yourself. You can't mail in plays. And I mailed in the Niners. I thought, listen, they're in major trouble. And they flipped a switch, starting with a Dan Campbell missed fourth down.
Yeah, it was, listen, the first part of this game looked like a brilliant young OC working a defensive coordinator who replaced a great defensive coordinator in DeMeco Ryans. I had a couple GMs, a couple execs in the league. One of them, a GM, text me, and they're like, boy, they missed DeMeco Ryans, who was just, and he's a brilliant young head coach. And I thought when I watch them, I mean, Detroit and Green Bay, offensive coaches, sort of offensive leaning cultures right now, are both very good first quarter teams. The quarterbacks, Goff and Jordan Love, stay on script. Where Jordan Love can get in a little trouble is off script, little erratic. Where Goff can get in trouble is sometimes playing from behind, or if you can get pressure on him. I did think the Niners got better pressure on him. But if you go back to the first half of that game, that was a lot of Ben Johnson. First of all, Goff had all day. They were running, so the Niners couldn't pin their ears back. It is interesting. I mean, I think my takeaway in both games today, the one thing I'll say is for a 7th round last pick and for an undersized guy, Purdy has been in so many games, high school, college, and now pro. He's just had so many snaps that he's just kind of situationally, I see no high or low with him. I mean, if he goes to the podium, John, he's unemotional. I've never seen him smile. He smiles less than Kawhi Leonard. Like he's just kind of static. That's not a terrible quality. He's not very emotional.
Very mature guy. I mean, he's engaged at 23, 24 years old. I mean, I would say that's not typical for NFL quarterbacks in 2024 in the modern day culture. One thing, speaking of the two quarterbacks in the second game, if you just put him in a pocket untouched, Goff throws a better ball. You can see much easier.
No question.
6'5". But the game, as games get uglier and as you can generate some pressure and things it's football. Things don't go as planned. You need to be able to make some plays with your legs. Jared Goff just cannot. Kirk Cousins cannot. And that is one element that Kyle would like Jared Goff. But there is an element of having just an athletic quarterback. You don't need to be Lamar Jackson. You just need to be able to move.
That's why they drafted Trey Lance. They
100%.
So Brock gives them that element. And it's funny, when they got Trey Lance, what I had heard in the building was he's not as athletic as we thought.
No, he's slow. And that's there are always a thing in scouting about time, speed, or athletic ability. If you went to watch a guy play basketball or a guy at the combine, the combine's in a month or whatever, all these guys run fast 40 times. And then there are guys like St. Brown, who I don't know what his 40 time is, but he plays really fast. Debo runs a 4.55. Well, put the ball in his hands, no one catches him, right? So I don't know what Brock Purdy runs, but I know when he scrambles or when he moves behind the pocket, he moves fast enough to get away from some guys. Now, he can't run away from everybody, but his play speed is really good. And this gets back to instincts. And to me, instinctive football players, the Lions have a lot of them. I mean, they really do. They have a fast team. So do the 49ers. Fred Warner plays really fast and Dre Greenlaw play really fast because they're instinctive players. I mean, they're good athletes, but when you can read and you know what's coming, I mean, these players in the NFL have been talking about this in the history since I've been alive, about knowing what's coming, preparing. It helps you play faster. And then there's the upper level of like the truly great instinctive players. And obviously the 49ers are full of them, right? I mean, they just are, from Kittle to Debo to, I think their coach, when he gets in a rhythm, Kyle's weird, right? Ben Johnson has just been red hot all season long. Kyle can have games where you feel like, God, what's he doing? And then today it just kind of flipped, and then he got his mojo, and the rest was history.